Good morning. Happy Wednesday. I hope that your day is off to a good start. Mine is so far. I've shown you this mug before, but this is one of my favorites by my favorite potter, my Shalom mug. I probably mentioned this, that if there's one Hebrew word that we would do well to remember and try to apply to our lives, it's shalom. The sort of stock definition for it is peace, but it's more than peace. It's completeness and wholeness. But I wasn't going to talk about shalom today. I really could, though. I wanted to take a minute and reflect on the big controversy that came out of the opening ceremonies for the Olympics last Friday night. I guess unless you've been living under a rock, you've heard about it. So I watched the opening ceremonies like an awful lot of people did, and most of it I liked. I loved the idea of doing a parade of nations on, like, as a boat parade down the Sand River. Like, that's really cool. I loved Celine Dion at the end. She's had some health issues, hadn't been able to perform publicly in a couple of years. It's, heavy metal is not really my thing, but switching from the music of Les Mis to death metal is, wow, that's interesting. And they showed Marie Antoinette minus her head. And then there was the big controversy. The big controversy were the organizers trying to mock the Last Supper. Were they trying to mock the Last Supper, or in particular the painting of the Last Supper done by Da Vinci? So what has stirred this up? And I'll try to describe it as best I can in case you haven't seen it. Still, there was a moment in, actually it was more than a moment, where you had 17 or 18 people. Let's just say that to call their clothing unusual would be the understatement of the century. It's like, really, to my sort of boring conservative taste, we're pretty weird looking people, body paint and stuff. And there's a still shot of them in a row with one in the middle with like big crown headdress on her head, and these 17 or 18 people, they're like this, they body paint and weird clothing. Apparently some of them are drag queens, and a still shot of that was displayed alongside Da Vinci's painting of the Last Supper. And that created an awful lot of furor. Here in the U.S., people got really upset about it because they thought that it was mocking the Last Supper, or at least Da Vinci's painting of it. Even the Roman Catholic Church in France protested it, saying, like, you can't do this. On the other hand, I'll try to be as fair about it as I can. On the other hand, if you're watching it as a live event, it's not a still shot, it was a live event. So these 17 or 18 people in the body paint and weird clothes, some of them drag queens apparently, reenacting a big celebratory feast. Their table, morphs into the runway, and then they go into part of the skit, I guess, goes into runway fashion models. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I should have put it on Do Not Disturb. So this is not really just one set freeze frame, but it is in essence a small bit being played out. The organizers of the Olympics, the organizers, the designers of the opening ceremonies said that they were not intending to, they weren't playing off the Last Supper at all. That the Last Supper, that painting wasn't, they weren't even thinking about that. That in reality, they were trying to recreate another painting, a painting called Feast of the Gods. And just a couple of things here which makes me think that is plausible. First, the Last Supper, that painting, has no real connection to France. It's a painting by an Italian artist, and the original work is in Italy. The original work is not in the Louvre or another museum in France. There is a painting called The Feast of the Gods that purports to be a painting of a feast done by the Greek god Dionysus. Dionysus was the Greek god of wine and festival. And Dionysus is also, in mythology, the father of Sequana, the goddess of the Seine River. And this, and there's a painting done in 1635 by a Dutch painter that is in Dijon in France. And this Feast of the Gods painting, also, you could see where, and it's, at least to my untrained eye, you can see where what we saw last Friday night does, at least with some imagination, represent, maybe even more closely, the 1635 painting than it does the Last Supper. So, according to the Olympic organizers, they were aiming for the 1635 painting that is in a museum in France. So, my take on it, my 2 cents. And this is just going to be my 2 cents, and you are welcome to agree or disagree. We can reasonably disagree on things. First is, I think we should be, as Christians, we should be charitable. And if they said that they were not aiming, that they were not intended to mock the Last Supper, that that they're really trying to mock or recreate a different painting, charitable thing to do is sort of take them at their word. Also, in the realm of charity, the organizers of the Olympic Games have apologized and said that they did not mean to offend Christians, that they were not trying to recreate the Last Supper or mock the Last Supper, that they were mocking or recreating a different painting altogether. But they're sorry for any offense that they caused. The last time I checked, Jesus told us to forgive. I might be wrong on that, but I believe he told us to forgive people. So that is in order here. Second, so let's play this out. If they intended to mock the Last Supper, if that was their intent, and it may have been, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, but if that was their intent, and we know that was their intent, how do we respond? And I saw one person on Facebook say this, that the drag queens and other odd-looking people in the set were the sort of people that Jesus might have hung out with. And he's right. After all, Jesus hung out with tax collectors. He was criticized by the Pharisees for hanging out with prostitutes. Amongst his disciples, he had tax collectors and zealots. He had Matthew, a tax collector, and Simon, who was a zealot. And a zealot was like an ancient vigilante. Like, we're going to take out Rome, one dead Roman at a time. Jesus tended to get in the most trouble when he was hanging around the really religious folks. It was the really religious folks, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the priests, that normally had the most problem with him. Another thing. Jesus, in my estimation, is ruler of the universe. We commonly don't see that. The realm of heaven is all around us, but it is largely unseen. But at least I believe that Jesus is ruler of the universe, and that every knee shall bow before him. And if Jesus is the ruler of the universe, he doesn't need me to get really mad about the opening ceremonies for the Paris Olympics. He doesn't need me to defend him. And my last take is this. Again, this is if you're taking the skeptic view and you're not believing the Olympic organizers, you take the skeptic's view that they intended to offend us as Christians. My last take is this. Should we be really surprised when the world acts like the world? The world is not Christian. The world is not Christian. And can we be surprised, can we as believers be surprised when the world acts in ways that is non-Christian? I don't think we can. We can't expect the world to have the same values as we as believers do. We can't expect that. The world isn't Christian. And so I don't think we should get really, we should be really surprised and stunned when the world acts in ways that is non-Christian. There have been lots of Facebook comments, indignation that these people be judged by God. The people who did this will be judged by God for mocking the Last Supper, for mocking Christ. And in a way, they're right. The world will be judged by God, yes. The world will be judged by God, and they will be judged by God not so much for whether they mock the Last Supper or not. They'll be judged by God for either following or not following Jesus. Mocking the Last Supper is not, and even if they did it intentionally, is not an unpardonable sin. What we get judged for is whether or not we have followed Christ, whether or not we have believed in the name of the only Son of God. So we have this event last Friday, which may have been intended to mock the Last Supper, but the organizers say it wasn't. Even if it was intended to mock the Last Supper, I would imagine, I might be wrong on this, but I would imagine that God's honor is far more affronted by all of the murder, all of the rape, all of the hatred by Russians in Ukraine, and ongoing conflict in the Middle East, and on and on and on. I think that all of those things are probably more of an affront to God's honor than what these silly people in Paris did last Friday night. And I might be wrong on that, but that's my take on it. So if they're intending to mock the Last Supper, if they were, and according to their words they were not, that's not an unpardonable sin. What is unpardonable is blaspheming the Holy Spirit, and ultimately is to die without Christ. If the organizers and the participants last Friday night are lost, as we might put it, it will ultimately be because they didn't believe in Christ. It won't be because they mocked the Last Supper. If they are ultimately lost, it's not because of what they did last Friday night, it's because they didn't believe in Jesus. And so how do we respond to the world? We cannot assume that the world is Christian. It is most decidedly not. Our country is not Christian. It is most decidedly not. So how do we respond to the world? Well, how did Jesus respond to the world? How did Jesus respond to the world? We know the answer to this one, don't we? For God so loved the world, even the world that would crucify his son, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. Right? We remember those words from Sunday school. For God so loved the world. So how do we respond to a world that is non-Christian, a world that at times doesn't like us as believers? Well, we respond to the world by loving the world. We respond to the world by praying for the world. We respond for the world by doing our best to bring Christ to the world and to bring the world to Christ. That's how we respond. So that's my 2 cents on it. And you are welcome to agree or disagree. That's fine, just as long as you do it civilly. Anyway, I hope that you have a great rest of your Wednesday.